You were standing on a crime scene. Nobody told you that yet. The victim was an entire planet. The suspect is still out there, technically, floating around in your atmosphere right now. And the weapon? Air. Just air. Here's the strange part. This is an ancient history class. This is a thriller. And you're already a few thousand years too late to stop it. Let's go back. Way back. 2.4 billion years ago. Earth had a system. A working one. Methane in the atmosphere, trapping heat like a thick wool blanket nobody asked for, but everybody needed. The planet was warm. Wet. Stable. Boring, even. Stability is usually boring, right up until it isn't. Then something tiny showed up and ruined everything. Cyanobacteria. Microscopic. Harmless looking. The kind of organism you'd never suspect of ending the world, mostly because it doesn't have a face, or motives, or even the basic decency to feel bad about it. These little guys discovered photosynthesis. Great for them. Catastrophic for everyone else. As a waste product, they started pumping out oxygen. Lots of it. For a while the oceans soaked it up like a sponge that hadn't checked its limits. Then the sponge got full. Oxygen started leaking into the sky. And oxygen does not play nice with methane. It hunts it down and destroys it, molecule by molecule, like a chemical assassin with unlimited time and zero mercy. The blanket didn't fray. It got ripped off in one motion. Without methane, the heat had nowhere to stay. Temperatures didn't dip. They collapsed. And once ice starts forming, it doesn't politely stop and wait for instructions. Here's where the real horror kicks in. Ice reflects sunlight. Dark ocean water absorbs it. So the more ice spreads, the more sunlight bounces straight back into space, instead of warming the planet. Less heat means more ice. More ice means even less heat. It's a feedback loop. And feedback loops do not care about your feelings, your civilization, or the fact that none of this is technically your fault. Soviet climatologist Mikhail Budyko modeled this mathematically in 1969 and found something deeply unsettling. Once ice crosses roughly 30 degrees latitude from the equator, the loop becomes self-sustaining. Unstoppable. Like a snowball. Rolling downhill. Except the snowball is the size of a planet and the hill never ends. For decades, this stayed theoretical. A scary campfire story for climatologists. Could a planet really freeze completely? Pole to pole? Equator included? Then in 1992, a geobiologist named Joseph Kirschvink went looking through ancient rocks and found something that should not have been there. Glacial debris. The unmistakable wreckage left behind by grinding ice sheets. Sitting at what used to be Earth's equator. Glaciers. At the equator. That's not supposed to happen unless the entire planet was frozen at the same time, top to bottom, side to side, no exceptions, no survivors of warmth anywhere. Kirschvink gave it a name that immediately became iconic and slightly terrifying. Snowball Earth. You'd think naming the monster would be the end of the story. It wasn't even the middle. Years later, a Harvard geologist named Paul Hoffman went digging through the deserts of Namibia and found something almost insulting in how confusing it was. Layers of limestone, the kind that only forms in warm tropical seas, sitting directly on top of ancient glacial rubble. Like finding a beach towel frozen into a glacier. Someone, somewhere, owes geology an explanation. Hoffman's answer was almost cruel in its elegance. While the entire planet sat frozen solid for millions of years, volcanoes kept erupting underneath the ice, because nothing, not even a fully frozen apocalypse, stops a volcano from doing its one job. They pumped carbon dioxide into the atmosphere nonstop. Normally rain would wash it back out. But there was no rain. No oceans exposed to the sky. No way for the planet to exhale. So the carbon dioxide just kept building. And building. For millions of years, quietly, patiently, like a debt collector who never forgets and never gets tired. And then it collected. The greenhouse effect that finally broke wasn't gentle. It was explosive. Within what scientists estimate as only a few thousand years, practically overnight on a geological clock, global temperatures may have spiked to over 50 degrees Celsius near the equator. Ice melted almost everywhere, almost at once. Hurricanes powerful enough to physically reshape coastlines tore across the planet. Acid rain fell from skies thick with carbon dioxide. Whatever survived the freeze now had to survive the flood, the heat, and the chemistry experiment happening directly above its head. Somehow, something did survive. You're proof of that, technically. Whatever clung on in the cracks beneath the ice, in tiny pockets of liquid water near deep-sea volcanic vents, eventually became every animal that has ever lived, including the one currently reading this sentence. Feel free to thank a microbe later. It won't hear you, but it's the principle that counts. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. This wasn't a one-time disaster. It happened at least twice, in a stretch of time scientists now call the cryogenian period. Twice, the planet froze solid. Twice, it nearly cooked itself back to life. And both times, life didn't just limp through. Some researchers believe the brutal selection pressure of squeezing into shrinking pockets of survivable habitat may have helped trigger the Cambrian explosion not long after, the sudden burst of complex animal life that produced nearly every major body plan still walking, swimming, or scrolling through phones today. In other words, the apocalypse may have been a recruitment event. Of course, recruitment event is generous. Nobody applied for this job. Nothing voted. The pockets of survivors weren't chosen because they were special. They were chosen because they happened to be standing in the one crack of the universe that hadn't completely given up yet. That's the part nobody puts on the motivational poster. Evolution doesn't reward the strongest, or the smartest, or the most deserving. It rewards whoever simply didn't die first. Harsh, but at least it's consistent. And here's the detail that should really bother you. Both times the planet froze solid, it had absolutely no idea it was about to thaw. No warning. No countdown. Just centuries of silence, followed by an ending so violent it reshaped continents. If a planet can sit that calmly on top of that much pressure, maybe calm was never proof that everything was fine. Maybe it never is. Why is any of this your problem now? Sitting somewhere warm, somewhere safe, completely insulated from a planetary deep freeze that ended hundreds of millions of years before your species even had the concept of a bad day? Because the mechanism never left. Ice still reflects sunlight. Carbon dioxide still traps heat. Feedback loops still don't negotiate. The only thing that changed is the timeline, compressed from millions of years down to decades, and the cause, swapped from ancient cyanobacteria to something a little closer to home. Earth has already shown you, more than once, that habitability isn't guaranteed. It's not a setting. It's an outcome. One that's been narrowly, almost accidentally, avoided every single time so far. So you're standing on a crime scene after all. Except the case never actually closed. The same suspect, the same weapon, the same feedback loop that turned this entire planet into a frozen tomb and then nearly cooked it raw, is still active right now, quietly running in the background of everything you call ordinary. You are not standing on solid, guaranteed ground. You are standing on the thin, lucky edge of a planet that has already frozen completely once, and somehow, impossibly, thought its way back to telling this story. Anyway, all that is if you even believe in evolution.